The song is about inviting you to look at where you're holding in your body, in your mind, in your consciousness, any resentment, where you're holding on to a belief that someone has taken your power, where you're holding on to a belief that you have to take on somebody else's stuff. So this song gives you permission to give that back, but more importantly, to give back the energy of love. Yes? So as I'm singing this song, I invite you to just take a breath and think of that someone that's kind of triggering you right now, where you've kind of given your power away or you've taken on that stuff. I just want you to hold them in consciousness. You don't have to do anything about it. And just listen. I once heard a powerful story about a man who stood in his truth with such conviction in who he was, he would not be moved. Someone stepped out of the crowd and said, "Are you Martin Luther King?" He said, "Yes, I am," and the well-dressed man spit on him. King took out his handkerchief and wiped the hate from his suit. He gave it back to the man and said, "I believe this belongs to you. I will lift you up, do what I can do. I see your heart, I know your pain, 'cause I've been there too. I will hold you high while you do what you have to do. 'Cause I am clear who is standing here. I believe this belongs to you." Are you ready to give up those stories that's been holding you in bondage? Can I get an amen? Yes? I once had a powerful story I used to carry around. I thought it was you all this time who held my spirit down. But now I know the truth of who I came here to be. You are my angel in disguise, not my enemy. So I thank you for the part you played in this dance we had to do. I give you back the love that's real. I believe this belongs to you. I will lift you up. I'll do what I can do. I see your heart and I felt your pain, 'cause I've been there too. I will hold you high while you do what you have to do. 'Cause I am clear who is standing here. I believe this belongs to you. Can you sing that with me? I will lift you up. Come on, y'all. Do what I can do. I see your heart. I see your heart. I know your pain, 'cause I've been there too. I will hold you high. I will hold you high while you do what you have to do. I am clear. I am clear who is standing right here. I believe this belongs to you. I give you back the love that's real. I believe this belongs to you. Yeah. So I have my notes here. I probably won't even have to use them, but so I'm just gonna not use them. So again, my name is Ester Nicholson, and I am the founder and CEO of Soul Recovery. I'm also on the NAATP and She Recovers DEI committees, and I'm honored to stand here before you today with 36 years of ever-evolving recovery. Thank you. I'm going to speak to you today about unconscious racial bias. And when we get into discussions about race and other cultures and what's going on in the world, it can be pretty uncomfortable. The discussions around this topic can be pretty uncomfortable and trigger us in ways that we might not recognize, because we're learning so much about each other. We're learning so much about different cultures and races and ethnic groups and sexual orientation and genders and all of that. We're learning so much, but most importantly, we're learning so much about the inner workings of our own mind. And some of us have taken a very hard stand on what we believe to be true or on what we know to be true, and some of us don't know where we stand at all. And so with that said, I'm going to invite you for this next hour to put aside everything that you think you know about racial bias or about unconscious racial bias, so that you can become completely available to a different perspective. Are you open to that? Awesome. So I'm going to do a little exercise with you, a short exercise with you, where I'm going to invite you to just grab your wrist, which is an acupuncture point. You can keep your eyes open or closed. And I'm going to invite you to inhale deeply and exhale on the word peace. Inhale deeply. Exhale on the word peace. And one more time, inhale deeply. And exhale on the word peace. And I invite you to repeat after me. I put aside everything I think I know about racial bias. I put aside everything I think I know about my own racial bias. I put aside everything I think I know about the racial bias of others. I put aside every experience, opinion, perspective, idea, ideology about racial bias, so that I may have an open mind and a fresh new perspective. Take a breath deeply. Exhale on peace. Thank you. I was inspired to create Soul Recovery 14 years ago when I found myself dying emotionally and spiritually in long-term recovery. My life was unmanageable, and I was stuck. None of the healing practices I was engaged in at the time were working. Nothing was working, not the 12 steps of recovery, not other transformational practices I had in my toolkit. Nothing seemed to penetrate my intergenerational trauma and my emotional addictions to unworthiness, feelings of not being good enough, and shame. And I was baffled. I was stuck. I had hit a wall because it was the 12 steps of recovery and other powerful transformational tools that had healed me from crack cocaine addiction and had given me my daughter back, who had been removed from my custody. And I was desperate. I was desperate to find something to enlarge my spiritual life, to go deeper, so that I could be restored to sanity, because I was feeling crazy at 22 years of recovery. I needed something that could restore me to sanity and to help me to feel safe in my own skin, because chronic anxiety had me on the ropes. I was afraid of everything, as it talks about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was haunted by 100 forms of fear, even though it wasn't rational that I was afraid. Yes? So I had to find a new approach to my recovery. I was being called to go deeper. And on my path to going deeper, I realized that it wasn't the 12 steps of recovery or other transformational tools that had failed me, but that I was attempting to recover from the erroneous belief that something was inherently damaged and wrong about me. I was attempting to recover from this deep core wound that had not been touched by the work I had done up until that point, this deep core wound, that I was damaged and I was broken. And as long as I was attempting to heal and recover from that belief system, from that perspective, the only thing I was doing was resending a signal over and over and over again to my cells, to my brain, to my nervous system, to my unconscious mind, and to every aspect of my anatomy that this assessment was the truth about me. And I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, that what you believe is done unto you. It doesn't matter about what you want. What matters is what you truly believe. So I wasn't seeing life as it really was. I was seeing life as I thought I was. Because what we know about the universe, what I've come to know about the universe, God, life, higher power, or whatever it is that we choose to call it, it only sees you as whole, perfect, and complete. That's how it knows you. It doesn't know about your problems. It doesn't know any of your illusions of unworthiness and not enoughness. It only knows your wholeness. But the laws of the universe recognize you as you think you are. You feel what I'm saying? So when it's reflected back to us what we think we are. So my recovery shifted from recovering from my intergenerational trauma and my emotional addictions and my destructive patterns that were still going on at 22 years of recovery. So it had to shift from that perspective to shifting to the recovery, rediscovery, and reawakening to my essential nature of wholeness. Waking up to this amazing beingness that I was created out of, and I discovered, wow, I was born into addiction, I was born into dysfunction, but I was created out of greatness. Can I get an amen? You were created out of greatness. You may have been born into dysfunction and born into addiction, into that belief system, into that energy field, but you were created out of greatness. And I remember Reverend Temple speaking about last night about the little kid who was visiting her infant sibling, saying, please tell me who I am because I'm starting to forget. And that's what we do as we enter the world of beliefs and wounds and paradigms and legacies of our parents, of our ancestors, passed down generation after generation after generation. We are born into that, but we are born out of purity and greatness. Yes? So I was being called to recover and recover means to recover something that's been lost, to recover something that you've misplaced. So we look at recovery in the recovery field as, oh, I'm recovering from addiction. But recovery means really to recover something that you've always had, but you just misplaced. So I was being called to recover my essential nature of wholeness. I was being called to rediscover my innate identity. Say identity. Your identity. I was being called to rediscover my innate identity of worthiness and good enoughness. You don't have to do anything to be worthy or good enough. You were created out of worthiness and being good enough. So I was being called to rediscover that, and I was being called to reawaken, hold it, wait for it, to my badass sexiness. Can I get an amen? The sexiness doesn't mean, I used to think that it had to do with how much weight I gained or lost or how I looked or whatever, but sexiness, I have a new definition of that. It's not the male consciousness definition of that. It's the feminine energy definition of awakening to my preciousness, awakening to this gold, awakening to the beauty that the universe, God, life has created us to be. I think that's pretty sexy, don't you? So when I discovered this, when this became a part of my recovery process, I was like, wow, wouldn't this have been cool if at the very beginning of my recovery, like maybe on the first day, someone would have told me, you know what, Esther, yeah, you have the symptom of addiction and alcoholism and compulsive overeating and getting into unhealthy relationships. You are definitely, in these symptoms. These symptoms are symptomatic in your life when you have forgotten who you are. So you are here to recover. We got to put the house that's on fire. We got to put that fire out. But you are really here to rediscover who you've always been, beloved, before it was numbed out by intergenerational trauma, destructive emotions, and the collective consciousness of the world. You are here to recover who you've always been, Esther. Man, I think that would have been so cool to hear on my first day of recovery. And then I thought, wow, we get to do that for our clients now. The first day that they come to us, we get to acknowledge the house that's on fire. We get to acknowledge your life is unmanageable, that you've been addicted and you have substance abuse and all of that. But beloved, I know a higher truth about you, and I know that you can't get it right now. I know that this can't quite penetrate your consciousness right now, but I can't underestimate the power of planting a seed. So I'm going to plant this seed within you. And I'm going to affirm you and affirm you and affirm you and hold the space and behold you until something starts to click in your consciousness. Something starts to happen and you start to feel good about yourself for no reason. And you'll be like, where did that come from? You're like, oh my God, oh my God, Esther was right. TJ was right about me. My healers, they were right about me, right? So then I understood that if soul recovery, the recovery of your soul, the rediscovery of your soul, the reawakening to your soul, if it works anywhere, it works everywhere. Amen? So if it works everywhere, then this could also, and it is also, powerful and effective at addressing and healing racial bias. Because while racial bias is systemic, it is emotional and spiritual in nature. And we understand that it is spiritual and emotional in nature when we look at what's been going on the past 3 years since the murder of George Floyd, since the mass race-related shootings in Buffalo, and the fear, the sadness, the anger, the divisiveness that's going on in the world right now is spiritual and emotional. And in the past 3 years, the light is really being shown on the systemic racism that has been going on in our beloved recovery community. And as a result of that, there are many, many treatment providers, not all of them, but a lot of treatment providers who have become completely committed to becoming culturally competent by strategic DEI trainings and organizing DEI committees. The NAATP, which I'm a part of, are at the forefront of this initiative of becoming, of helping the recovery community become culturally competent. But what I've noticed is that while information is so important, all of the data and statistics and the information and the education that we're getting about what's happening in the recovery community regarding systemic racism and how we can eradicate that and all of that. My thing is, if we don't heal it spiritually and emotionally, it's not, no matter how action-driven we are, which is a very male-dominated action, right? That we're not gonna get to the bottom of it. Why are we not going to get to the bottom of it and really heal it? Because information without transformation is not sustainable. Amen? Right? And then I noticed that a lot of our white professionals, recovery professionals, were feeling a sense of racism fatigue and accused and yelled at and beaten up and shamed and resistant. And a lot of Black, Indigenous, and people of color were still feeling, oh well, they're just talking about it, nothing's really gonna change here, and still feeling ignored, shut out, and systemically left back. And so I looked at all of this, and I'm like, what is mine to do? How can I bring this healing to this community? Because neither way of being is conducive to the recovery of the soul that we need to heal this problem that has been in existence for centuries. Yes? And that inspired me to create compassionate accountability. Compassionate accountability, which is a training that tactfully address the root causes of unconscious racial bias. Compassionate accountability, what does that mean? It not only means being compassionate for those that we serve or being compassionate for other cultures and races, it means being compassionate for yourself when your unconscious racial bias, because we all have it, when your unconscious racial bias comes to the forefront of your consciousness, instead of going into shame, go into compassion. Compassion, ownership, embrace, process, release. That's how healing works, right? So, what is the unconsciousness? What is unconscious? There are many of us, and maybe there are a lot of you in this room right now, who are saying, I don't have a racist bone in my body, right? And I want to say, with all due respect and compassion and love, that that's probably not accurate. And that's probably not accurate because the casting system, racism, the belief in otherness, all of that has been going on for centuries, passed down generation after generation after generation. It is in our cells, it is in our DNA, it is lodged in outside of our field of awareness without our conscious permission. That's what unconsciousness is the unconscious programs, the unconscious paradigms, legacies, and ways of being that show up in the 10% of our consciousness in ways that we don't recognize, that might not even belong to us. Yes? So when we look at, it's in the water. And we had to drink some of that water. No matter how open we are, we had to drink some of that water. And so consciousness is 10% consciousness, which is the aspect of yourself that you're familiar with. It's your thoughts and your habits and your patterns and, the way you think and, how you be. It's like it's the you that you recognize yourself to be. But the other 90% of your consciousness is underwater. It's unconscious. And this, in this unconsciousness is every memory, every emotion, every trauma, every idea, every way of being, every paradigm, every legacy that goes back centuries and centuries and centuries is lodged somewhere in that 90%. So you might be walking around one day and see someone of a different race or someone who's different than you, and all of a sudden this errant thought will just come, boom, up in your head, and you'll be like, whoa, where did that thought come from? I'm such an open person. And that thought might not have had anything to do with you, but it's in your consciousness. And so when we can become aware of that, then we can take the action to start to process that and to release it. So 10% of your conscious mind is the part of you that you recognize as you, as your identity, that it's who you think you are. The 90% of your unconsciousness is the part of you that's running the show, that's driving the bus, with or without your permission. How many times have you made a decision, and after the decision was made, asked yourself, what was I thinking? Why did I make a decision like that? Well, it wasn't you, the 10% that was thinking. It was that unconscious program, pattern, family paradigm, all of that came to the surface and made the decision. And that's how we look at unconscious racial bias. And then there's the aspect of your consciousness that is pure consciousness. That is pure consciousness. It is God. It is higher power. It is the universal presence. It is truly the only consciousness that there is. But the unconscious mind and the 10% of your consciousness has taken on a limited view of itself from this entire purity of your consciousness. So what we want to do is we want to do the work to get back to that wholeness, to your authentic self, pure consciousness that doesn't know anything about otherness or racism or someone being different or someone being bad or someone being good. It only knows love. How many of you have had the opportunity to watch the movie The Help, where Viola Davis played the nanny, and the little girl that she was in charge of didn't see the nanny as black or white or anything. All she saw was that this being saw her and loved her and affirmed her all the time. She didn't know that this very person that she loved so much had to use the outhouse to use the bathroom because she wasn't allowed to use the restroom, the bathroom inside of the house. So this little girl didn't know racial bias. She didn't know racism. She only knew loved. But she was in an environment, she had been born into an environment where she was going to learn. This person who is this complexion is not our equal. This person who looks like this is not a good person. This person who looks like this is not a Christian or not good enough. So we learn, so racism and otherness is we drink the water, it's a learned behavior. But I would dare to say racism is also an addiction. And it is based in a spiritual malady, spiritual disconnection from our authentic self, emotional dysfunction, psychological disease, and we embody it on a physiological and biological level as well. And so when we are suffering from a spiritual malady, a mental obsession, and a physical allergy that only a spiritual experience can heal, then we look at this as, well, if this is a spiritual disease, if the foundation of this is a spiritual disease, then it requires a spiritual solution. And so incorporated in compassion and accountability is the 12 steps of recovery, because the recovery industry is in a recovery moment. Can I get an amen? We are in a recovery moment, and we need to go deeper than information. We need to have that psychic change. We're calling forth to have that psychic change, that energetic change that can allow us to be in our oneness. Hey, is my eyelash like on my cheek or something? Because something feels real weird up here. Okay, I just want to know. I'm not gonna fake the funk. Like, I was like, there's something in my eye. I'm wondering if it's my eyelash. I mean, I really glued it on really well this morning. I just wanted to make sure. Is it cool? Thank you. Are you with me so far? I've said a lot. It's a spiritual disease, and it requires a spiritual solution. It requires compassion for all of us, where no one is feeling shamed, no one is feeling blamed, no one is feeling guilted, no one is feeling bad. Bring your cultural, intergenerational stuff to the table and do the work. So the first stage of compassion and accountability is called the 6-stage bridge, where we become aware, we acknowledge, we accept, we admit, we become accountable, and then we take action. And if you notice, action is the last one on that list, because we want to actually align spiritually and emotionally with oneness, pure consciousness, in conjunction with taking action and as a foundation of the action that we're taking. And then we look at those 12 steps of recovery, which I really, really love. So it's not that the 12 steps stopped working for me. I had outgrown the way I was working the 12 steps. And so when we look at step 1, after we've done that 6-stage bridge, and we can look at that and say, I admit that 10% of my consciousness that I keep trying to effort with and fix stuff with and make it happen with, that male energy, that aspect of me is powerless, and it makes my life unmanageable. But in admitting powerlessness, it allows an opening to happen so that I can tap into the infinite, unlimited power that can do through me, as me, and for me what I've never been able to do for myself. And then I can become available to come to believe that a power greater than myself, and this power greater than myself is actually my real self, your real self. It's the highest version of yourself, it's your authentic self, and you can't be restored to something that was never the truth about you in the first place. So all through the steps, it's saying, you were always whole. You were always oneness. You were always enough. We were always one with every man, woman, and child, no matter what race, no matter what culture, no matter what ethnicity, that we were always one. I'm coming to believe that a power greater than the me that I'm familiar with can restore me to the oneness of all life. Because I'm making a decision to turn my limited will, my habituated will, my patterns, my ways of being, my familiar way of being, over to the care of this aspect of me that created me out of itself perfectly. And I'm willing to take a fearless and thorough inventory of my racial bias, to get clear about my belief systems, to get clear about the parts that I have intentionally and unintentionally played, to get clear about my core wounds and my trauma around this. And then I admit to myself and to another human being the exact nature of my illusions. I don't like the exact nature of my wrongs, because we've been wrong long enough, don't you think? But the exact nature of my illusions and patterns. And I am entirely ready that the fog be lifted, that the veil part, and that the illusion is dissolved so that I can awaken to the truth of my beingness and the truth of the beingness of everyone on this planet. And I stand in humility and readiness to be so much more than I thought I was, to see that everyone else is an expression of the divine. And I make amends. I make a list of people that I have harmed, intentionally or unintentionally, energetically or physically. I make a list of the people that I've harmed. I become willing to make amends to them, except when to do so would create more confusion and harm. I continue to take inventory. I continue to take a look at those beliefs, those intergenerational traumas, those intergenerational legacies and paradigms that come up, because they're going to come up. Once you start the process, they're going to come up. And so as you're doing your strategic DEI trainings in your treatment facilities, you want to couple that. You want to work in tandem with the spiritual aspect of this work. And then you are ready to seek through mindfulness and prayer and meditation. Prayer aligns us with that which is already done. Prayer doesn't make anything happen. Prayer aligns you with the truth that is already happening. It clears the static on the line and aligns you with that which is already happening. And it is from this place, it says, as a result of these steps, and whether you call them the 12 steps or just immutable spiritual laws and principles, whether they're called the 12 steps or not, they must be practiced on some level in order to come home to our authentic self. Now we are ready to be of maximum service, of equal service, to offer excellent service to everyone in or seeking recovery in a way that is just love and acceptance, and seeing each and every being not as their color, not as their culture, not as their race. Of course, we want to become cultural, we want to experience cultural humility, cultural curiosity, and cultural competence. And we do that by lining up spiritually, emotionally, and physically. This spiritual and emotional work is the natural first step to any DEI strategy. But it's not only the first step, it's a complement, it's a counterpart to any work that we do. Because what it does is it keeps us centered, it keeps us clear, it keeps us in a vibration of oneness, acceptance, inclusivity, diversity, and inclusion for all of humanity. And it is from this place that we become a beneficial presence on this planet, that we become less action-driven, but we allow our spirits, our souls, to drive the very action. Yes? Yes, thank you. I'm open for Q&A if anyone has any questions. I think there's a microphone right there.
Come on up.
Hi.
Hi. I have a friend who works in the anti-racist field, and he talks a lot about how one of the issues with racism is how we sanitized emotion and can make wildness wrong.
Say that again.
Trying to figure out how to ask this question without.
Say it the way it's coming out. Say it the way you want to say it so they can understand it.
So when we schooled the Native Americans, there was a saying, kill the Indian, save the man. Mm-hmm. And that it was kind of sanitizing wildness and this history of whiteness going through cultures, mm-hmm. making emotionality wrong. Mm-hmm. And that plays out in the world where if someone's more emotional, especially if that person has brown or black skin, there's fear, and that's feeding a lot of racism. I'm wondering what's your take on that, and how we can kind of be more aware of how we show up with BIPOC clients when there's that dynamics at play.
Absolutely. If I think I think I'm understanding you correctly, and if I'm not, then please correct me. But that, one of the things that we're facing right now, a lot of the treatment providers that I'm working with, what they're facing is not knowing how to handle racial trauma in their Black, Indigenous, and people of color, but also not knowing how to handle the racial trauma in their white clients. Because what I'm saying is that it's not only Black, Indigenous, and people of color that are suffering from intergenerational trauma, it's also white people as well. Because the moment that any of us have bought into the belief of otherness and superiority or inferiority, we created a fracture in consciousness separating us from our souls. So it's important to get to know, and I'm in the process of creating that training right now on how to address racial trauma in our clients, no matter what race they are. Because I think that needs to be a huge part of their treatment plan. Because everybody that comes into treatment has some intergenerational trauma, has some racial trauma, and some unconscious racial bias. So it needs to be addressed and treated, of course, with compassion, but with the lens from the spiritual and emotional place.
I think that's hitting part of it. The part that feels important is there's white people being threatened by high levels of emotionality, and that lack of emotionality in what we call whiteness culture, or the kind of socialized culture, and the presence of it in more BIPOC cultures, the emotionality is intelligence.
Yeah, so what I see here is that we're all hurting. We're all hurting, we're all confused, we're all overwhelmed, and that this disease, this disconnection is coming up to the surface. So when you see, a Black person or a brown person accusing and shaming a white person, they're acting from their unhealed, unacknowledged racial trauma. And then when you see a white person saying, I don't have anything to do with that and you're crazy, that's coming from their unhealed intergenerational racial trauma. So what I'm saying in compassion and accountability, let's bring all that to the table and work the steps and do some work on that so that we can heal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I just want to add in into the conversation about, because it's racism, ageism, colorism. There's racism within my specific culture. I'm Dominican, and we're from African descent. So not African American, but I'm Black. So there's just so much within it. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is just as a clinician, when it comes up, is just listen. Do not try to understand. You will not understand what the other person went through. You may never be able to experience that. Do not try to understand. It's just literally listen and educate yourself. I think that's just a very big thing, is educating yourself. And when you see a client, you're not just seeing this specific client. You're like, I'm seeing this person that is from Dominican Republic, that she may experience these specific things. These are the systems that are against her that she might not even know, and she's a woman. What are the systems against women right now? And understand that whole system, and just seeing this client and listening. So when they come up and they're saying something like, maybe I don't understand, but it is not the client's job to teach you. Right. It is your job to go out there like, oh, this is something that I don't know.
Right.
You know what? Let me go and learn. Let me learn what they're talking about. Right. Because it's not their job. We're tired.
Absolutely. So thank you so very much for that. And so it is so important for the clinician heal thyself. Clinician educate thyself. And that's why compassion and accountability has been created. That's why compassionate awareness for the clients is in the process of being created, because we cannot give what we don't have. Until we acknowledge our own unconscious racial trauma and own unconscious racial bias, then I can't recognize that in my client. I have no idea how to address that. But if I'm doing my own work then I'm going to have a sense of how to navigate that in a way that's a part of their recovery. So yes. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. I absolutely love this topic. Thank you for bringing it here.
Thank you.
So my question is like, I know that like it begins with me, and I have to heal my own trauma, and I have to address my own biases, right?
Right.
But in working with others, like with clients, how do we approach a client or an organization where those issues are not being addressed as an organization? Like you can talk all you want, but when there's still disparities and there's still practices of hiring and you don't see who you are, how do you bring that sort of to a level playing field?
Right. Well, like I said, I am seeing so many more treatment providers that are committed to the healing in this industry of systemic racism and educating themselves and doing the work necessary, and even being willing to put focus groups together on how clinicians, how to train clinicians in dealing with their clients' racial trauma and intergenerational racial bias. So this is, first of all, it didn't just start in the 1600s. It's been going on even before that. So we have to come to, first of all, keep doing our own work. And if you want to talk to me about that at the end, about how I can bring that to your program, then that'll be great. But keep doing our own work, because the work starts at the top. The work starts with leadership. But to also have compassion and patience that this is a global, centuries and centuries old generational problem that's not going to be healed overnight. And even though we're looking at the divisiveness in the world and everything that's going on right now, and it's so scary and it's so sad, I invite us to look at this as a part of the blessing, as a part of the healing, because it has to come up. It's always been here, but it's now just obvious, and it has to come up so we are inspired to do the work that we need to do to heal it. So we're in the process of healing it. We just have to know this, wow, this has been going on for so long. It's not going to go away overnight. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, with that, I am complete. Peace and blessings. May the good Lord be with you down every road you roam. Stand up, y'all. All right. And may sunshine and happiness surround you when you So I just forgot all the words. Bum, bum. And when you grow to be proud, dignified and true. All right. And do unto others as you'd have done to you. Oh yeah. Be courageous and be brave. And in my heart you will remain what? Forever young. Say it again, yeah. Forever young. One more time. Forever young. Thank you. I'm over here at my table, my book, Soul Recovery. I'd be happy to talk to you and sign a copy for you. So I'll be right over here. Thank you.